This happened back in the spring of 2007 when my buddy and I were doing a month-long backpacking trip across Europe. We had started in London and took every imaginable mode of transportation through France, the Netherlands, Germany, and Austria, and finally ended our trip in Italy. Due to a bus delay, we arrived in Rome several hours later than scheduled. The folks at the hostel said they hadn't assumed we were going to show and rented our beds to our travelers. Not to worry, they told us. There was a spillover property across the city they rented out on such occasion. This was a 2-bedroom apartment with several bunk beds packed into the rooms. Here we spent our last 3 nights in Europe along with a group of young Spaniards we ended up going out clubbing with and having a blast. On our last day, our Spanish friends left and were replaced by a large group of 10 Latin American men and 1 woman that we met briefly before heading out for our final night in Rome. There was a bit of a language barrier, but everybody seemed nice and we headed out separately. My friend and I got back to our bunks around 2 a.m. and about an hour later, the other group shambled in. Clearly pretty drunk, they all got in their bunks, and within 15 minutes, the lights were out and they were snoring away. All but one. One of the young men, on an upper bunk directly across from me, was still awake, seemingly playing with his phone. My eyes were shut and I was starting to drift off to sleep just as a bright light hit me directly in the face, and I heard the shutter click, sound on his camera phone. Annoyed but not wanting to be confrontational, I turned onto my back, facing slightly away, hoping he would just go to bed. Instead, he continued taking photos of me, whispering obscenities in English that I won't repeat here. I realized that passivity was the wrong strategy when he got down off his bunk and crept over to mine. For a few moments he stood over me, apparently with his hands on the upper bunk where my traveling companion slept. At this point my heart rate went through the roof, and I quickly started considering options. A cold realization suddenly hit me. We were in a private apartment with no other travelers or staff in the building. If I confronted this person, he might awake his companions. I had no idea whether any of these men were dangerous, and if they were, we might be in for the fight of our lives. If they were so inclined, they would probably kill us and just say we left on schedule, and we'd never been heard from again. I was thinking of kicking this dude in the stomach and bolting for the kitchen to grab a knife when he suddenly knelt down and reached into my bed. That was it. I sat up sharply and got right in his face, asking, "You need something, dude?" As menacingly as I could. He froze without saying a word, got up and walked into the common area. I heard the bathroom door shut. About a minute later, he got back in his bunk, and 10 minutes after that, he was snoring peacefully. I was wide awake, fully dressed and ready for battle the rest of the night. Shortly before dawn, I woke up my friend and we got out of there. He did ask, "What was that guy doing last night?" But I have no idea how aware he was of the whole thing. We were on our flight to Heathrow a couple hours later, and have never discussed it since. So yeah, creepy photographer dude. If I ever see you in public, you might meet these hands. Creep. My background. Military. Moved here 2 years ago, so I've been going to the local 24-hour fitness ever since I got stationed here. For these last 2 years, I've seen this dude named Bran who seemed pretty cool. I've played one-on-one basketball with him, and he has told me about his crazy ex-wife, blah blah. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. It was so normal to me that I invited him over on July 3rd to have enchiladas with my family. Again, nothing out of the ordinary here at all. Last Friday, I played basketball with my wife. This is a tradition that we have after every workout. Well, Bran comes up from my right side and smacks the ball out of my hand. He has done this before, so I don't think much about it, but today seemed different. He seemed more aggressive, and he apologizes for interrupting our game and goes to play ball on the other side of the court. I get to my car and there are 4 text messages from him. "What's your problem, dude? You at the gym? You can't mess up what's already messed up. No big deal, I'll catch up with you." The thing is, he sent me those text messages 30 minutes before I saw him in the gym, so I respond with, "What are you talking about?" No reply. Then the next day at 7 a.m., he texted me and my wife's coworker Trey, who also goes to the gym, so a group chat, which is as follows. Video link to the song Future, Mask Off. Steal From Me Too. And a video link to the song Eminem, Go to Sleep. The lyrics, though, word for word. So my buddy Trey and I are confused. I texted Trey to ask what the heck this dude is talking about. My buddy Trey texted back in the group chat, "What are you talking about, dude?" So 5 hours later, he replies with, "Oh yeah, I forgot. My thoughts are sporadic like an addict. Oh, now I remember. I love you, man." For real. Thursday night around 8:30, this cat got my keys and water out my gym bag and stole $1,000 and a pistol from my car. Gym released video to police, but nobody knows what his name is. I thought I'd seen him with Trey, but I don't know Trey's last name. I just gave the cops Trey's first name and phone number, so if you get a call, you know what it's about. They're just trying to identify him so it doesn't happen to somebody else. They didn't see him getting in my car, just in my gym bag in the gym, then putting my water back 5 minutes later. It's strange they stole my water. Cops are scratching their heads, so I filed a police report for $1,000 and a missing pistol and a half-gallon of reverse osmosis water. You think you have friends until the cops come asking questions. You're going to see how many friends you have. They all snitch because why? Save their own ass. See you Monday night at 6. I'm one. So at this point I start putting stuff together. He was aggressive at the gym and texted me because he thinks I took his stuff. I texted him back saying if I could help any way I would, and he said thanks bro. I then called him because I wanted to clear my name and Trey's name, but 20 seconds into the conversation, I could tell the dude was not right in the head. On the phone he said he got his cocaine, money, and guns stolen out of his gym bag. He said that he knows I, Trey, and my wife plotted against him to rob him. Also says that I invited him over to plot against him. He said I made a big mistake by inviting him over and showing him where I live. I asked what he meant exactly and he said, I've got guns if the cops don't handle this. I will handle this, just so you know. I said, are you going to try and hurt my family? And he said he knew where I live. I explained to him that I'm in the military and that I don't get involved in illegal stuff like that, and neither does my wife or Trey, who are also in the military. We have clearances. He said I know you did it and mentioned that he is a diagnosed schizophrenic who is always high on drugs, that people know not to mess with him. He said the gym won't release the footage to him, only the cops. At that point, I ended the conversation because I knew I could not reason with somebody who was unreasonable. It also occurred to me that if the gym didn't release the footage to him, he has no idea who took his stuff and is assuming. So I called Trey immediately and let him know to watch his back at the gym. That this dude is a nut job and he thinks we plotted against him. Paranoid loony. Yesterday around 9:04 I got a text from him again. And you and your girl going out tonight? I'm buying drinks all night. So I replied saying, that's my wife. Have a good night. Then he replied, she's a hoe. Are you mad? At this point I'm shaking because I'm mad at this guy for saying these things about my wife, but I didn't reply. Then about 30 minutes later, he sent me video link to Mariah Carey, Obsessed. I did not reply. Now, I'm at a friend's house watching last night's UFC match. As soon as I get home, I call the local police to have an officer sent to my house. I explained all of the stuff to the officer, and the officer advised me to not go to that gym anymore and to not engage with the individual. He asked if I have a weapon at home and said I do. And he said, good, you have the right to defend yourself. I also have a huge German Shepherd. So today at 2:53 p.m., he sends a group text again to me and T. Meme of O.J. Simpson smiling with the caption, when you know you did it, but they couldn't find you guilty. I guess John, me, and I aren't friends anymore. Got all sensitive over a hoe. Done went soft on us. I guess this means next time I see you we're throwing hands. Or, are you cool with me calling your girl a hoe? I love you, John. Also, what are your opinions on the LGBTQ in the military? I say line them up like Columbine. And just so you know, I'm far from confused or forgetful. I love you, bros, and I owe you one. Or should I say 5? I feel like I should pay you for the mollies, or bath salts, or hooked me up with. Just let me know how much. My bank account is the only thing overdosing over here. While he was sending that string of texts, I, my wife, and Trey were at the gym canceling our memberships for fear of our lives. The gym also stated that they would suspend Brand's membership. I'm not going to block the guy's number because I want any evidence I can use against him in the event something happens to my vehicle, my house, or my family. Also, if you notice at the end of the last string of text, he is implying that we now sold him drugs. I've turned on my motion detector to record when I am not home. I've also shown my wife how to arm and use my weapon. I'm glad that my wife and I are moving to Germany soon, but it's not soon enough. I fear for the safety of my wife when I am not home. I'm not going to engage the guy because I don't want to give him any more ammo for the crazy scenario in his head. Ever seen the movie A Beautiful Mind? Honestly, at this point, I'm not even sure if anything was stolen from that. I don't really hang out with civilians because of the lifestyle differences, and the one time I did look, what happened? Now, I am not saying civilians are bad at all, but I carry caution even higher than before. Anyway, thanks for listening. Stay safe and keep to yourself at the gym. Update. The dude just found me on Facebook, now I have his last name. I sent the Facebook post to the police officer I spoke with earlier along with a Facebook profile picture. The guy Brand sent me a message also that said, hey handsome, cute picture, you should be a model, you know? I blocked him and had my wife block him. Now he knows our last names. What's next? Another update. Look at pictures of local apartments on Google. Pretty easy to find where he lives. About 15 minutes down the highway from me, and I've got enough information on him now that if something happens, I can notify the authorities of his approximate location. I'm a 25-year-old female and have been living with my boyfriend for the last 6 years. This was about 4 years ago. I was online a lot and still am, and met a lot of cool people. Many had rough backstories, but I also offered a listening ear and tried to support them. I'm going to mention that I have autism and can be pretty naive, so I don't recognize certain bad situations right away. I met a 24-year-old dude from Australia. I'm from Europe, who had just broken up with his girlfriend, whom he said was emotionally unstable, and it ended with her acting crazy and him not being able to handle it anymore. I talked to him about it a lot and tried to help him cope with the situation. We started to game together online, and I started to see him as a friend. But after a while, I started to notice that he was kind of acting like I was his girlfriend. I glanced over it because he knew I had a boyfriend, and it might have just been kindness and I mistook it. I'm famous for being too oblivious for that kind of stuff. He started to tell me that I should break up with my boyfriend, going on long tangents and writing me emails about how my boyfriend was like his ex-girlfriend, how he abused me mentally and physically, even assaulting me and was making my life a living hell, and how he was going to kill me one day, which all completely sounded absurd. And I kept explaining that to him. After a while, it was obvious that he indeed thought of me as his new girlfriend. He made it clear that we were going to spend the rest of our lives together and that he would make sure of it. He was convinced that me telling him to stop and leave me alone was all orchestrated by my boyfriend, and I was actually being held hostage. Luckily, he didn't know my full name, or so I thought, or where I lived. I started getting messages from random accounts with pictures of people bloodied up, saying, "This is going to happen," all with his name on the pages themselves. This went on for a while, and I begged him to stop, but he kept pushing. I blocked him, but he kept making new accounts to get in contact with me. I decided to just delete my account on that site altogether and to not go there anymore and hoped it would go away. But then I suddenly started to get my messages on Facebook. I never told them my full name, and even then I made sure my Facebook is extremely private with a family nickname, and I had only had other family members on there because most lived far away. My boyfriend didn't even have a Facebook account, and like I said before, I kept my full name and location to myself. He made about 150 pages and profiles and completely directed them to me. Pictures of people doing crazy things that I can't mention here, telling me he was going to do it too. Complete with the overlays and banners of, "This is your fault." It seemed like he made it his full-time day job to send me messages on different platforms. He even found stuff like my YouTube account and followed me around there. Eventually, he started sending receipts of the school books that he had sold, of his current school year, and later one plane ticket to the airport where I actually lived, close to and back to Australia. He kept sending proof, like of him moving out of his apartment and putting his stuff in storage, and he told me he was coming to save me from my boyfriend, who had kept me hostage, and that he was going to kill him and take me back to Australia so I could be safe. He had gotten rid of all ties he had, quit school, quit his job so he could have a blank slate, telling me that we'd have to live under the radar for a while, all the while he kept sending pictures as proof of doing these things because he loved me and wanted to show it. By now, I had blocked every Facebook account with his unfortunately extremely common name and basically deleted every other online account I had. Even though a lot were under different names, he found me everywhere. Eventually, the day came where he was taking pictures at the airport, which he was posting on my Facebook wall, and him in the plane whose logo I immediately recognized as my country's official airline. He began talking about the actual house I lived in, which was kind of a strange place to live. I lived in an industrial area in the maintenance apartment inside a huge empty building with only one other office. I was on the lease as a maintenance person, but that was purely for legal reasons because the owner thought he could make some money on the side. The whole building was open to me, and there weren't any people living remotely nearby. He definitely couldn't have known I lived there. He started messaging about how perfect that whole setup was for his plans. My boyfriend was aware of everything that had happened by then and thought it was best if maybe we sought out the help of police to give us some advice, but of course they couldn't do anything and suggested that if we were scared, we'd better just go somewhere else, and we decided to go stay at my parents'. We went back the next day since we both had school and work, but saw police cars in front of the building. The owner informed us that somebody had broken in. This person had tried to go into the office next to our apartment. They had an alarm system that went off and alerted the cops. At that point, I wanted to know what the heck was going on and if he had tried to break in, since that was our first guess. It wasn't hard contacting him since he already sent me multiple messages, again on Facebook from several different accounts. My boyfriend contacted him and the guy agreed to have a webcam chat, and when he turned his camera on, I immediately recognized a hallmark of our city from the window behind him. I silently freaked out, not letting anybody know I was present. My boyfriend then spent within 7 hours talking to this dude. This guy was furious and still certain my boyfriend was going to kill me, with nothing that could change his mind. After more than 7 hours, with my normally calm boyfriend getting pretty annoyed at this point, because of the most stupid reasoning, The guy copy-pasted the whole chat conversations and spun them in crazy ways. The guy was saying he was disgusted and started to throw out profanities towards him about me, basically saying that if I was so adamant on staying with him, I deserved what my boyfriend was going to do to me and he wouldn't warn me because I had ruined his, my own and our kids and our life together. I only heard from him one more time after that. A short video of him being in the hospital saying that he almost died and that I was going to bring darkness over the earth instead of light, like he promised. He said stuff like that often and other weird spiritual promises he said I made. I got scared again for a while but got silent after that. Even though it was years ago, I'm still afraid the guy isn't over me and will come after me. But as far as I know, his parents had locked him in a nursing home for the mentally ill. I got this info a year later when his older brother finally responded to my Facebook messages to him telling him to please speak to his brother because he was not okay. Stupid Facebook spam folder. Mr. Crazy Guy, please stay away. A user on here said it's called erotomania, which makes sense. My dad and I live together in our own multi-family home in Germany. My dad has a serious lung condition. His lungs produce and trap an excessive amount of mucus. The trapped amount is huge and keeps his lungs from working correctly. It's pretty normal that he has to be picked up by an ambulance every 2 to 3 weeks because he can't breathe anymore. Last week it was that time of the month. He couldn't breathe. I called an ambulance and he was brought to the closest hospital. Pretty normal for me because this happened at least 10 times in the last 6 months. So I went to bed after he got picked up. On a Tuesday. I went to work the next morning and got a text from him that he was having to stay for at least 2 days more, approximately. Wednesday evening I got home from work and played a match of Rogue Company when somebody suddenly rang the doorbell. That's unusual because we never have unannounced visitors. I walked to the door and was about to press the doorbell to open the main door when I heard it, I believe more than one voice, directly in front of my door. So that somebody just got past the main door. Weird. I asked in German. Hello, who is it? Silence for 3 seconds. Then a person who sounds like my father but at the same time doesn't sound like my dad answers. Micah, it's me. I forgot my keys open the door. I thought, okay, in that case, wait a minute. My dad never calls me Micah. Only my nickname, and there was that sarcastic tone in the voice. I don't trust this situation. I called my father on his phone. If the person in front of my door was my father, his phone should ring, right? Right. Well, it didn't. My dad answered, and as I suspected, he was still in the hospital. Meanwhile, the two persons on the other side of the door heard my phone call and started kicking my door. Let me in, Micah. It's your daddy. Let me in. Thankfully, that door was reinforced. After I threatened them with calling the police and having a big knife in my hand, they left. I heard their footsteps running down the staircase. I rushed to a window facing the street to check if I could see a car or a license plate. Nothing. Just a few footsteps in the distance. They never came back. What's weird is that they knew my name and that my father wasn't home despite his car standing in the driveway. Stuff was hitting the fan when a buddy reported something similar. We called the police. Investigation in progress. For New Year's, my boyfriend at the time, one of our friends and I drove up to the entrance, a seaside town in Australia just south of Newcastle. My boyfriend and his friend decided to have an early night. I wasn't ready to go to sleep yet, and we were right on the main road, just up from the bars and clubs, so I headed down there hoping to catch up with some friends I knew from the area. Obviously, I'd had a few drinks at this point, given it was New Year's Eve. I wasn't able to find my friends, and the venues were starting to close, so I turned around to come back, and as I walked up the street, I was approached by a group of 5 men, probably young in their 20s and an old man 40 plus. There weren't many people still on the streets by that time. They struck up a conversation with me and offered to give me a ride. I already felt uneasy, so I said, no thanks, and tried to walk off, but as we approached a parked sedan, they pushed me into the back, still keeping up the false pretense that we were going to give me a lift back to my accommodation. As we approached where I was staying, they deliberately spoke loudly over the top of me and we drove right past. They headed off the main road and proceeded along a country road to a farmhouse, asking all kinds of personal questions on the way. Who was I there with? Where was I from? How old was I? At this point, I was thinking I'm not going to get out of this and was having flashes of what I'd seen over the years on TV about the Anita Cobby murder. I kept my cool and answered them in a way to let them know that I had somebody expecting me who would notice my absence soon. I also told them I was 15. I was 18, and that seemed to cause some debate among them. If not for the age, then for the possibility that somebody might already be looking for me. The farmhouse was bare and didn't really look like anybody was living there. They sat me in a chair in the middle of the living room while they all went to the attached kitchen. I could see them debating nervously amongst themselves, looking over at me through the countertop opening in the wall, like they couldn't agree on anything. One of them kept asking me if I'd like something to eat or drink, which I refused. While they were talking, the old man broke away from the group, came out and asked me if I wanted to go back with him to see the horses, in a creepy tone like he was talking to a kid. I made up a reason to refuse, like I didn't like horses. I think it was at that point I figured out that his idea and the young guys were having some serious regrets. It's likely they were going to figure out how they're going to get out of this now. What would a man that age be doing hanging around a bunch of young guys? Everything about him gave off unhinged vibes. I played it pretty cool throughout, not wanting to do something that could set them off. I saw their opportunity to get out of there by keeping up the pretense of believing the excuses they'd given me. We got back in the car and headed back to the entrance where they abducted me. I was relieved I got out of there, but what surprised me even more was the driver didn't just put me out by the side of the road or drop me off directly. First, he dropped every other person in the car off except the old guy, who stayed back at the farm to their homes. I couldn't believe it in light of what just happened. I'd seen his car, I'd seen their faces, and I saw where they lived. It didn't at all seem consistent with people worried about getting caught. Initially, I thought they were going to kill me when they got done doing whatever they had planned, but this made it look like they had been doing this on a whim and hadn't thought it through. I would say at the suggestion of the old guy who thought he was going to orchestrate this whole thing. By the time he finally dropped me off at my accommodation, he was apologizing very much. I immediately told my boyfriend and his friend what happened, and they both accused me of lying. I think that was probably the most upsetting part. I arrived back just at dawn, so I would have been gone for about 4 hours, and nobody had even been worried, let alone gone out to try to find me. When I got back home to Sydney, I told my parents what happened, and they didn't believe me either. I strongly thought the police should have known about it in case that was a practice run for them, and they went on to do something nasty to someone else. I'm certain the old guy would have if he hadn't already. The young guys, I think, were just kids who he had managed to talk into that harebrained idea, who bailed out halfway through when they realized what they were getting into. I'm not sure what made me think of it now, all these years later, but I did wonder if anything had happened to anyone before that event or since. I've told a few people over the years, but they've generally not known how to react or just brushed it off as it happened a long time ago. I haven't heard anything about any similar cold cases or anything else come up that I could call and offer potentially useful information on, so I'm hoping that nothing else did happen to anyone.